Welcome, everyone. I'm Enrique Acosta Gonzales, and I'm joined by Ashkan Tashvir. And in this episode, we cover part two of how to build an effective team. And Ashkan, we last covered meta content and the things that really are in deep of every candidate. And I can't wait to get into the tools of how to actually get this team together.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Enrique. And thank you, everyone, for being with us. Yes, so in the previous episode, we talked about why it's extremely important for us to understand people before we invite them to join the team. And we talked about effective teams. We talked about the core teams that the expectations are so high on them. We want them to come up with innovative products. We want them to collaborate quite effectively. We're talking about the startup teams. They don't have all of the resources in the world, and mainly all they have is their human capital. Or we're talking about small, extremely effective teams within much larger organizations or corporate. Um, yeah, so not every team. Yeah. um, we want unique individuals to come together, tap into their unique being, tap into what they have to offer. We want people that they relate to work, not just something to pay the bills. And there's nothing wrong with paying the bills, but not just that. We want to look for people that they relate to work as a vehicle for them to be self-expressed. It's an extension to their self-expression and their contribution to humanity, and most importantly, something that it's going to make their life more meaningful. It's extremely important to read this in the conversations we're going to have with these people before we um, invite them to join the team. Now, we discussed meta content. We said that the meta content is the intellectual substrate for sense making of each and every individual. Like everyone has a meta content, everyone has these layers through which they make sense of the word. So this is fully articulated in my book Meta Content. And if someone is interested, you can definitely go and then have a look. Now, we in the previous episode, we went through a few of these layers just to give you a kind of an understanding of what we mean when we say meta content or reading the meta content of the person you're inviting to join the team. One layer, for example, was cognitive map. It's basically what things are for that person, how that person relates to commitment, responsibility, partnership, effectiveness itself, proactivity, accountability, responsibility, and so on. Um, and how they actually relate to work itself, like as we said, like what is work for you? Work is something just for you to pay the bills or get paid for your time spent or sell your expertise, or is something beyond that. So another layer was mental models. Basically, we're talking about how things work for that person, what are the processes, what are the processes, how that person cares about another person in the team, how that person conveys a point, how that person takes harsh criticism and not be crushed on them, how that person is resilient, and so on. Yeah. And then their perspectives, which angles, through which angle they look at the matters. Are they willing to go from this perspective to another perspective and put themselves in other people's shoes? Let's say, for example, in the context of conflict resolution, and so on. So we discussed that it's extremely important for us to read the meta content of the person that we're inviting to join the team as much as possible. Now, the thing is, through the meta content discourse and the nested theory of sense making that I have it in the meta content book, it's going to guide you where to look at. I just gave you a few examples, yeah? So yeah, so it's going to guide you to look into certain areas like cognitive maps and mental models and perspectives and the narratives, how they interpret the events as they're unfolding, etc., etc. Now, then We also discussed the being framework. The being framework is a more practical contextualization of the meta content discourse in human performance. In a simple language, it was my attempt as an author to map out the meta content of human performance. Yeah, when teams are working, like what kind of qualities matter the most for them to develop leadership and convey leadership in a highly effective, high performing team. So therefore, instead of looking into the whole part of the cognitive model of a person, we're only taking 31 different qualities that they matter the most. Through my studies, I've realized that are extremely important for us to actually look into when we're hiring a person, and then even after that, as we keep um, developing the team to become better and better and um, be more effective in fulfilling the intentions that we set for the team. Now, and then we talked about the being framework. We said that the being framework provides this ontological model, which is basically the 31 qualities. We also talked about the assessment tool that it can be used if you are trained in how to use it. And there are pathways. You can check our websites, beingprofile.com, for example, and you're going to learn more about it if you're interested. Now, so the tool is going to make it easier for us to understand a person, whether a person who's about to join a team, obviously with their consent. But we tell them that like if you go do this assessment, it's going to make us know you better. And now, or the people that are already in the team, and we can basically leverage the tool so that we can see how they relate to each and every of these qualities. Yeah. So these are the things basically we discussed in the previous session. We also talked about how we create the environment and the culture in such a way that when a person is joining, they can come up with their opportunity creation letter using a blank page. Um, that person knows themselves to a degree. They understand the culture of our business and what we do, and through these conversations, and them going through the materials we provide to them, and then there are to actually create the opportunity that for themselves and justify it, that why this is the right environment for them, why they believe that they can add value, and how they are going to do so. And then in the probation period, well, basically we can let that be developed by the person in collaboration with the rest of the team, so that it generates a high degree of clarity around their responsibilities within the team. Yeah, instead of we impose that on them, or create a kind of a typical traditional job description and then just trying to find someone that fits the bill. So now the next topic here in how to build an effective um, team, it's, let's call it the fostering open communications, which in the being discourse language is vulnerability, it's openness, it's epistemic humility. So let me pass it to you now, um, Enrique, what that is, you think, and why it's so important, why an effective team needs to foster um, open communication and vulnerability.
Yeah, well, it's incumbent on every leader to consider this for their team, right? How do you encourage a culture where team members feel comfortable enough on sharing their ideas, giving feedback, and potentially even raising concerns? Because a lot of times we encourage people in our teams to communicate because we say,
Mm.
hey, there's open communication, but we're not ready for the feedback, or we're not
Mm.
ready for, hey, if you didn't know, this went wrong, or hey, you
Mm.
could have done this different. Hey, and
Yeah.
we'll push back, right? So it's
Yes.
imperative that we create that culture where people feel comfortable in sharing
Yeah.
what they feel.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So in the being discord, in the being framework, we talk about this thing that I call it exposure triangle. Um, so it's the three qualities of the 31. One is awareness, how we relate to intentional consciousness, how we bring our attention to something, uh, how we know stuff, and how we understand the stuff. And then authenticity, it's the congruence of our conceptions of various different fragments of reality or ideas. So it's like how credible and valid our understanding of something is. Yeah, so that's also very important. um, um, yeah, and then the third one is vulnerability, or the acceptance of vulnerability, knowing that we're vulnerable to um, our the limitations of our perceptual structure. We are vulnerable to some harsh point that another person in our team, our colleague, may um, um, make. We're vulnerable to the client giving us a call and then yelling at us and being extremely unhappy. We're vulnerable to so many different things. We're vulnerable to the mistakes that we make, like we're going to make heaps of mistakes. We're vulnerable to the shadows of our colleagues and ourselves, and so on and so forth. So knowing that, um, we 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 have these vulnerabilities, and and create an environment in such a way that, as Enrique mentioned, like we can easily, without fear, without double thinking that, oh, if I now say this person is going to be offended, etc., etc., creating such an environment like a sport teams, that they can tap each other on the back, they can actually mingle together, they can be humorous about some of the critiques that they have against each other, some of the suggestions that are going to come out. When, for example, person in the team sees the other person in the team is not actually being resourceful around something, being comfortable bringing that conversation up, and this is extremely important to create this kind of dynamic. And if you're going to like constantly be at the fear of in fear of, should I say this, should I not say this, and all of that, and like this is quite common, like these political correctness conversations and things like that, Enrique, in today's environment. I haven't seen many effective teams actually working, having those kind of concerns, or basically prioritizing those things, like how to say this and not to offend this person, over actually passing the ball quite effectively, working with each other. As Steve Jobs famously said in one of these interviews that he had, he was talking about, he was using this analogy of having this like ugly typical rocks being put together in this device, and then the device is going to basically roll and turn and everything. and and all of these um, rocks are going to touch each other. There's going to be clashes. They're going to hit each other, and ultimately, most of these rocks are going to come out being polished and beautiful. And so this is how we have it in the language, being grounded. Or so we definitely want that. Now, um, hope. Hope is something extremely important, and having a positive outlook. Yeah. So especially like when we're working with the startups, in entrepreneurship in general, and also this applies to SMEs or larger corporations, there's no guarantee that you're going to follow certain steps, and definitely that product is going to sell, it's going to be built successfully, it's going to be welcomed by large part of the market. So you're going to do your best. You're going to make decisions based of intelligence, the part of information that can be verified, and the part of the information that you can't even verify. You're going to make a decision. You're going to go ahead and you're going to build products, etc., etc. And when we're talking about this positive outlook, positive culture, is like, you know that this is not exact science, but you want to see the half full of the glass. Yeah. So, what do you think that the role of that positive outlook is in effective teams?
Well, hope is needed in every instance of every day when you're talking
Yeah.
about working together with diverse community, right? You have different
Yeah.
people at different stages of life with different, we talked about meta factors and all these other things, but there's
Yeah.
different things pulling you at any given time. And so
Yeah.
when it's the opportunity of a leader to provide a positive environment, or at least a positive outlook into the success of the team, you're
Mm,
infusing the team with the expectation that no matter how hard or difficult the things may get, that there is always going to be an upside to all of
mm,
this. And when you infuse your teams with positivity, hope,
mm,
faith,
mm,
things of that nature, you tend to get a more gelled team because
mm.
they know that everybody has each other's back. We're not going to
Yeah.
fall. We're going to rise, whether it takes one day or 10. We're
Mm.
going to go and achieve together. And so, what it does is it brings in this sense of energy that you can't fail because you are a team and you're going to do it together.
Yes, yes. Yeah, that was a very real way, nice way to put it. So, see, in the especially like with the startups, or again like the initial teams, let's say product teams in larger corporations, you want to have enough number of people in the team that they come from this viewpoint, they believe it before they see it. Not taking a typical empiricist approach, saying that no, I will believe it only and only if I see it. That's not going. So because it's not going to be exact science, and that's what makes entrepreneurship particularly quite interesting. Um, there's this adventure side to it. Yeah, um, it's not an exact science. So unless you have these visionary people in the team, that they take this positive outlook and they go, you know what, we believe it before we see it, rather than what are the evidences so that for us to believe it. So you need a level of craziness around that, and irrationality or irrationality. Yeah, not rationality or irrationality, irrationality. You need that. And famously, again, like many renowned entrepreneurs in the world, they've touched on this in multiple different ways. Like we just touched on that analogy from Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs is the one who actually did that voiceover on that famous videos, the crazy ones that Apple um, published at some point. So, and that is extremely important because, like, in any team, um, as you're lifting a startup up or you're trying to successfully design and implement any product, or effectively sell a, an absolutely brilliant product, you want to market it, you want to influence the perceived value of that offering, whatever it is, in the eyes of your market. You want to have resolution, because it's inevitable that you're going to face many difficulties as you go. You know, like there's going to be objections, there's going to be policies that are getting in your way, there's going to be competitors and so on and so forth. So you want to have this approach of having resolutions no matter what. And so I think another one that, particularly from a being perspective, being discourse perspective, we focus on is the authenticity. We touched on it, but authenticity is extremely important. How you are committed, to what extent you are committed to shape credible views and opinions, particularly when it comes to decision making. So that's an extremely important one. We also emphasize a lot on integrity, and you touched on it at some point in our conversation. And when you say integrity, we're not talking about being of a high moral standard here. Standard. We're talking about you as a system, because we are a system too. We're not just a system, but we are a system too as human beings. We have various different constituent parts. So this system has subsystem, has components. Now, I'm using this analogy, but basically we're referring to the key qualities, like those key qualities, like how you relate to commitment, how you relate to authenticity itself, how you relate to responsibility, empowerment, etc., etc. Um, the health of your relationship or how you relate to all of these ideas and how you act upon them, how you let them manifest themselves through your decisions and behaviors are extremely important. And when we talk about your overall integrity or the integrity of your being, we're basically talking about the overall health of your relationship to all these various different key qualities that matter in terms of our performance. And then if you zoom out more, it's not just you as an individual or the integrity of your being, but also the collective integrity of everyone in the team. And that's also very, very, very important. And that's also something that we can measure it to a degree using the being profile tool, as we talked about it. So we can actually see the collective integrity of being of different people in the team. And often when we start working with teams, we take a snapshot of where they are at this stage, how they are being, and then with some interventions, and then we leverage the transformation methodology within the being framework. We basically generate a degree of awareness. We bring the attention of the team on their shadows, on their growth potential, on in which areas they can actually transform. Um, and then we go through this iterative process of executing, tracking, learning from what basically we track, refine and execution again. Then we gradually, in a progressive manner, often we create a higher degree of effectiveness within the team. So the integrity of the team is going to be developed further and further. The team is going to be more empowered, and the team is going to be more effective and robust in the face of the difficulties that they will be um, dealing with. So authenticity and integrity are extremely important um, factors that we want to take into consideration when we're building effective teams. Now, so one more thing that it's good to touch on before we wrap this um, up. So, what is the role of coaching, Enrique, in this? Because we're talking about Thrive strategy, we're talking about the integrity of the team, we talk about the authenticity within the team, we talk about all of that. What is the role of coaching in facilitation of this whole growth and becoming more effective and robust?
Well, if you want people to get to a point where they are effective in everything they do for you as a team member, you want to be able to provide for them an opportunity to walk through their processes.
Mm,
How are they thinking about the maybe the certain limitations or certain expectations, or how are they developing in their mind their mindset around certain things that may limit you to be effective. And so if you provide a level of coaching where they can work through those issues and actually get on the other side through the evolution of these talks and some guidance or maybe some suggestions, or allow them to get through that by getting to things that they actually know already, it will be such an effective tool for leaders or corporations to have within their construct, because this is how you develop. You had talked about transformation earlier. Some transformations come through coaching sessions, and this is a good way of providing it.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So, mm, um, see, we talk about the meta content. We talk about the layers of intellectual substrate to look into cognitive map, mental models, etc., etc. As we talked about, and we specifically talked about the being framework and its layers and the distinctions for each and every of these qualities. We talked about the tool, leveraging the tool. We talked about the training that is required around the tool so that we can actually interpret what that means in the context of that organization or that team. Now, so here's exactly where we need coaches. We need highly trained coaches, experienced coaches in the field and in the framework, and that's exactly what we do with the Genesis Coach Academy. Like where the coaches that we've worked with us and they are trained. So the thing is, you need people to facilitate this. There's no doubt. Now, you don't necessarily need to go to professional coaches. If you are a leader, so you can actually work on this archetype of CEO coach or leader coach or manager coach, whatever you like to name it. There are, and we can actually add some references to some case studies of highly effective CEOs or leaders that actually tapped into the training that we provide around the being framework, and they leverage the tool, and leverage the discourse, and leverage the framework in building that highly effective team culture and dynamics in their workplace. And so basically, you either want to use professional coaches that are highly trained in this, or you're going to be the one who actually give it what it takes so that you incorporate coaching um, um, in your practice, in practice of leadership. And the term coach is a little bit ambiguous now these days. Um, so it's not just a coaching thing. It's basically you as a leader knowing that you can tap into certain methodologies, models, framework, discourses, and theories so that you are equipped. Now, I mean, like what we have to offer here from the my work are not the only things available, are not the only theories, and not the only tools or the books or et cetera, et cetera. But we're basically talking about, so you need to have some, if you really want to build something, instead of improvising and just purely working on your from your experiences, they're valuable. But at the end of the day, like if you really want to take something seriously, you want to follow certain models, methodologies, methods, framework, theories, and so on. Yeah, whoever is serious, like in the pursuit of basically what we're doing, they want to look into to right tools, right methodologies, right and models and theories for them. Now, this is basically what we have to offer around the meta content and the being discourse that we discussed. Now, yeah, so you can be the one who go through what basically it takes for you to become that person that you can incorporate and leverage these tools, frameworks, theories, and methodologies and methods into the practice of leadership and development of leadership in your team. Now, but when it comes to coaching, just to make it clear before we wrap this session up, we're talking about having a series of intentional conversations with the group, with individuals within the team. We're talking about the quality of engendering accountability. We're talking about encouraging action. We're talking about supporting that person to actually bring their attention to their growth potential and their shadows, like um, the way that they are being at the moment regarding courage, regarding assertiveness, regarding how they deal with anxiety or responsibility, commitment, and so on, is actually getting in the way of their performance, hence the performance of the team. And ultimately, like this, I mean, where you're going to work with leaders, you're going to um, ensure that you strive as a leader to become a demonstration of basically this culture that we're talking about. and work with others, with a coach or without a coach, basically whatever works for you at the end of the day, to cultivate that kind of a culture that ultimately you can call it an effective team. um, so that's basically um, all I had to say on this. Anything you would like to add, Enrique, before we wrap the session up?
Yeah, there's a difference between building an effective team and hoping you get an effective team,
Yeah,
right? And that responsibility is on the leaders and on the organization.
yeah, that was a really good point. Yes, I think it happens a lot that sometimes we just hope by luck that like we end up having a good effective team, but that was a good emphasis on the fact that we're saying building and developing. Yeah. Okay, I hope that you enjoyed the conversation we had in these two episodes around how to build an effective team. And thank you very much for being with us, um, everyone. And thank you, Enrique, for being with me. Appreciate it. See you soon.